Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Real Time, where we talk about the movies we like.
And the ones we don't.
I'm Tyler.
And I'm Molly.
Today is the 40th anniversary of the original Back to the Future. This trilogy of movies is definitely one of my favorites, and well, it's just a great time all around. What do you think?
Yeah, rewatching them all again just, reaffirmed that this is a pretty good trilogy of movies.
Yeah, so let's get into them. The first one was released in 1985 by directed by Robert Zemeckis and produced by Steven Spielberg. It is the story of this kid, Marty McFly, played by Michael J. Fox, who discovers that his best friend and mentor, Dr. Emmett Brown, played by Christopher Lloyd, builds a time machine out of a DeLorean car back in the 80s. I feel kind of like a goober for having to describe that, but oh well. And after Doc is shot dead by the Libyans that he tricked into getting him the plutonium for the time machine, he is accidentally sent back to 1955 and has to find his way back home to 1985. It's a really wild trip, and we're going to get into it.
Yes, we are going to get into that right now.
Now, like we said, our main two characters are played by Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. And this series has mostly the same stars throughout, such as Leah Thompson as Lorraine Baines, Marty's mom, who, when he goes back to 1955, finds out that she has a crush on him. Kind of weird, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that gets a little awkward.
Crispin Glover plays George McFly. Just for this first movie. In the sequels, he was replaced by Jeff Wiseman for reasons we'll get into when we get into the second movie. But for now, he's the one who plays George, and he's pretty great in this movie. He has a nerdy charm that you feel bad for him, but also you want him to succeed too.
Yeah, he does a good job at playing the awkward, weird nerd guy, but yeah, he's a good guy, and you want him to have a good time.
Thomas F. Wilson plays Biff Tannen, the bully of George McFly in the past and in the present. Wilson would go on to play different versions of Biff, as well as his grandson and his one of his ancestors in the Old West, and he gets to do all sorts of he gets to let loose with these roles. He is probably one of my favorite actors in this trilogy. He is just incredible to watch.
Yeah, with his part, he gets to go all out and go crazy, which is pretty fun.
In this first movie, Claudia Wells plays Jennifer Parker, Marty's girlfriend, who gets replaced in the next two by Elizabeth Shue. This was done due to personal reasons, so these sorts of things happen. And James Tolkien plays Principal Strickland, the principal of the school that both George and Marty go to, and this man doesn't change a wink. He looks the exact same 30 years apart. He just has a little bit more hair in the 50s.
Yep, just a little.
Also appearing is a young Billy Zane as one of Biff's goons in the 50s and in the 80s in Back to the Future Part 2 in the Bad Future. But we're not there yet. We're still on the original classic, and well, let's start with maybe some of our first interactions with this movie. Do you remember the first time you saw it?
No, I can't say that I do. I'll say the first time I watched it, yeah, it just didn't have that big of an impact on me. So, but if I had to guess, it was probably at home on the TV.
Yeah, I'd like to say I was maybe around 13 or 12 or something when I first saw this movie. And I think like with with a lot of other people who see it at a young age. I was hooked immediately. I loved it from the first time I saw it, and right up until the end when we get the sequel hook that wasn't actually supposed to be a sequel hook. It was just there, but every moment had my attention, from when Doc's explaining how time travel works to Marty, to when Marty accidentally gets himself trapped in the past and has to race against the clock to both keep his parents together so that he'll still be born, to actually getting the DeLorean to hit the wire so that it can get the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity so he can go back to the present time. It's all just it was all just, well, electrifying to see.
Nice wordplay there. But yeah, it is very. I don't know the word I'm looking for. It's too late. Yeah, it gets you hooked. It keeps you wanting to watch more, and yeah, that's very exciting.
Now, I don't think there are any particularly deep themes or anything in this movie. What you see is what you get, more or less. Same thing with the sequels, for the most part, I think. Like there are some things about just personal determination and not letting people keep you down when you're clearly able to, well, rise above that. Yeah, you could say there's stuff like that, but I don't think it's as focused on as maybe I'm making it out to be. I doubt it is.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think that there's still something to be said about that, but honestly, I feel like this is just a fun sci-fi movie for that anyone can enjoy. And what's bad about that?
Yes, I agree.
Now, originally, instead of a DeLorean, Doc was supposed to make a time machine out of a refrigerator, but I think it was Steven Spielberg who suggested that they not do that because they didn't want kids climbing into a fridge and, getting trapped.
Yeah, that would be a problem. Also, how would the fridge go?
Same way the car goes.
Would it have wheels or would it just kind of spin?
Look, man, I don't know. Just go with it.
Okay.
But also, it's also kind of funny that Spielberg would go back on the decision to use a fridge this time when he'd do it over 20 years later in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But I guess, it's okay if Indy gets in a fridge to escape from an atomic bomb.
It'd be funny if he got into a DeLorean and just started driving away from the scene. That would have been cool.
That would have been odd, but whatever. So when the movie was screened at the White House, the president at the time, Ronald Reagan, the actor, he made the projectionist replay the scene where Doc mocks the idea of him being president because he thought it was funny.
Yeah, that is funny.
So this movie was actually banned in China for a while
Why?
because the notion of time travel disrespects history.
Oh, wow. China is always banning movies for crazy reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
So the original actor for Marty McFly was Eric Stoltz. Michael J. Fox was originally offered the role, but he said he turned it down because of scheduling conflicts with this TV show he was on, Family Ties. But Eric Stoltz wasn't working out, so he was given the boot, and basically Michael J. Fox had to go from set to set, barely getting any sleep between these two productions.
Wow. Yeah.
Which they fired him a decent amount of the way into production. Supposedly, there's some footage here and there of Eric Stoltz still in the movie, but you can't see his face, so it doesn't really matter, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Which it'd be interesting to see that movie where Eric Stoltz is Marty McFly instead of Michael J. Fox. I'm not sure if it'd be as good, but it'd definitely be an interesting, curiosity.
I guess. I don't know who that is.
He was the drug dealer in Pulp Fiction.
I don't remember.
Anyways, so while Michael J. Fox was able to play the guitar, he did still have to mime the performance of Johnny Be Good, but he learned to play it so he can mime it accurately. All right.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense, I guess.
Okay. So Crispin Glover he didn't really care for the ending too much, where Marty and his family are more well off, and Biff is working for George now because he thought it was too materialistic, and as well as sending a bad message that it's okay for one to bully his former bully. Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to bully your own bully.
Yeah, you do.
Let me say, but Biff was like a really, really big jerk, and he kind of deserves it.
He was also an attempted rapist, so it's
Yeah.
fine to bully him.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Okay. So there was some hostility on set, in particular between Thomas F. Wilson and Crispin Glover, but with Eric Stoltz. Okay, I should have read the rest of that.
Yeah, you probably should have.
They thought that Stoltz was pretty arrogant and rough when shooting the diners scene and trying to actually hurt Wilson. And for a while, Wilson even thought that Stoltz was fired due to his behavior on set, which I mean that might have been part of it too.
I guess so.
And after Stoltz was fired, the cast was really they felt like they were on thin ice because they in their eyes the main star gets fired. Any one of us can be next too.
Yeah. So why did he get fired?
Well, like I said, Michael J. Fox became available, so they got rid of him and brought him in.
Yeah, so the behavior probably had something to do with it too. If I had to guess.
Let's see. Okay, so there's a lot of other things that could have been with this movie, even putting aside Eric Stoltz as Marty. Some of the other people who either auditioned or were runners up was C. Thomas Howell, Pony Boy.
Okay, I was about to say, I'm not gonna know any of these.
Other people who auditioned were Ben Stiller, Charlie Sheen, George Newbern, John Cusack, not Joan Cusack, though that'd be interesting. Johnny Depp, John Cryer, Matthew Modine, Ralph Macchio, and Robert Downey Jr.
Okay, I do know some of those names.
John Lithgow was the first choice for Doc Brown before Christopher Lloyd was cast, but Lithgow turned down the offer due to filming conflicts with Twilight Zone the movie. Mark Mothersbaugh was also approached, but due to the fact that he's not an actor, he turned it down. Also considered were Chevy Chase, Danny DeVito, Dudley Moore, Eddie Murphy, Gene Hackman, Gene Wilder, Harold Ramis, Henry Winkler, James Woods, Jeff Goldblum, John Candy, John Cleese, Mandy Patinkin, Michael Keaton, Randy Quaid, Robin Williams, and Steve Martin were all considered as well.
That's a lot of people.
Daniel Stern, Peter DeLuise, Tim Robbins, Vincent D'Onofrio, and Billy Zane all read for the role of Biff before it went to Thomas F. Wilson. And as I said before, Zane would play one of Biff's goons, so it worked out for him.
Yeah, it did.
So Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, one of the writers, originally pitched the movie to Disney and then to Columbia. Both turned it down for completely different reasons. Columbia thought it was too quaint, and Disney thought it was too raunchy. Disney, in particular, took issue with the whole Lorraine coming on to her son in the 50s.
Yeah, that would be a problem, I guess.
Um, do you have anything more to say on the original Back to the Future? I can't think of anything more.
Not really. I mean, it's a classic. A lot of people love it, and it's easy to see why.
Yes, it is. We'll get to our ranking of the three movies at the end, but it's safe to say this one is going to be at the top for both of us.
Yeah, definitely safe to say that.
All right, now let's get to the sequel, Back to the Future Part 2. Back to the Future Part 2. Yeah, this might be my least favorite of the trilogy, if I'm being completely honest. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a fine enough movie. I just don't really like how it takes a whole lot of detours and does a lot of repeating throughout this. It just feels like we're just doing the same thing except from a different angle, which is fine, I guess. Like the movie does it fine enough. It's like I was just here. Why are we doing it all again? You know?
Yeah, I do see your point because it is kind of weird and yeah, jumps around and repeats. So yeah, I see your reasoning.
It might be kind of sacrilegious to say this, but I feel like some of the parts in the future didn't really need to happen because they didn't really contribute to the main plot at all. Like it feels like this plot takes a while to get started because yeah, at the end of the first movie, Doc picks up Marty and Jennifer and takes them to the future. It tells them it's got to do with their kids, so they go to the future and they stop Marty's kid, Marty Jr., who's a complete goober. Like I'm not sure how this kid is ever going to get laid. He is a complete mess. I don't like him. He sucks. Basically, is what I'm saying. They stop him from getting involved with Biff's grandson Griff, which okay, this character's pretty funny though. Not gonna lie. He's this basically this cybernetically enhanced version of Biff, and he's just completely insane. It's funny.
Yeah, he's definitely Biff, but just amplified.
And it's just we do the Marty looking at everything in this new place. We get him getting chased by Biff and his goons. We get just basically the same thing but newer from the first movie. It's kind of silly though. I should mention that one of the actresses who plays the girl member of Griff's gang actually did get hurt for real when they were crashing through the window of the courthouse. She fell like 20 feet and faced some pretty severe physical problems after this movie. So that's unfortunate to hear.
Did she sue?
We'll see in our research.
I would have.
I would hope would have gotten compensated fairly well.
Yeah, you would hope.
Anyways, so all that gets going, and then Marty finds a sports almanac book in this antique store, which is weird. Which, okay, side note, they go to 2015, and I remember 10 years ago, people were talking about like how this is the day that Marty went to the future, and it was like going on for most of the year, but because people on the internet are sheep sometimes. And then when it was actually the day, it was like, oh, that's cool. And which, another side note, it's weird to think that that was 10 years ago.
Yeah, let's see. I was a junior in high school, I believe. I remember that day because I think like in our free time class we watched the movie.
You were a junior in high school. I was 20.
You're older than me. It's okay.
Yeah. Anyways, where was I going with all of this before I got sidetracked?
The future. They were way off about the future.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Duh. Like, for instance, on the actual date in 2015, October 21st, in the movie the Cubs win the World Series, but on that date in 2015 they got knocked out of the World Series.
That's kind of funny.
Though they did win the next year, so that's great if you're a Cubs fan. I ain't though, so sorry your team's garbage.
Yeah, off by 1 year, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just a whole bunch of. I'm not gonna fault the movie for not being right about the future. Like there's flying cars and the Cubs winning the World Series and all this rejuvenating stuff that Doc does to his body that gets him a whole couple decades extra life, and just a whole bunch of fancy stuff that didn't happen, but whatever, it was the 80s, these things happened. Though Marty's kids are they're kind of glued to their devices, which they were right on the money with that.
Yeah, that was right. Yep.
Which, side note, Michael J. Fox plays young Marty, old Marty, and both of his kids, his son and his daughter. And it's pretty seamless on screen when they have all three of them together. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool how they do that because it does look pretty good.
Yeah, it's not as it doesn't look as polished as something like Sinners was this year, but it still looks pretty good.
Yeah, this was made in what year?
80s, maybe 89.
Yeah, so it was good.
Anyways, future. It takes a while to get the actual plot started. With the sports almanac, old Biff finds it and gives it back to his younger self in the past, and young Biff grows up to become rich Biff. He shoots George and forces Lorraine to marry him, and he becomes Donald Trump, basically. It was kind of a thing to parody Trump back in the 80s, back then, before he was trying to make America great again. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, it does take a while. This movie definitely feels like it's pretty long. I don't know how long it was, but
it was actually shorter than the other two movies by like 10 minutes.
Yeah, it feels longer, though, with everything going on.
Like, some parts of Marty going back to 1955 are pretty interesting, actually. Like, when he goes back with his doc, it's pretty nice to see him with a partner that, is completely up to speed with him when it comes to everything. So that's pretty cool. Not that I didn't like younger Doc, but it's Marty's Doc. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And just seeing things that happen kind of like in the just off, that would have just been having off of frame in the original movie. It's kind of an interesting thing. It's kind of like a Lion King 1.5 version of the first Back to the Future, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Okay, so I don't know why I'm pulling up the IMDb for part 2. Most of the same people are in this one, but that's okay. What? So just give me your general thoughts on Back to the Future Part 2 that we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot that happens. It's pretty busy with all the places they go to. They go to the future, and then they have to go back, and then he's trying to get back to the future again, which, I mean, that is the name of the movie. But yeah, like you said, there is a lot and it does make the movie feel longer than what it is. But you can still enjoy it. There's still some funny stuff, and the future's pretty cool. So yeah, there's good things.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. So getting back to the the actress for that I spoke before, that would be Cheryl Wheeler Dixon. She she shattered her face and right wrist in a fall and required reconstructive surgery. I'm gonna see if she was. Let me see if she filed any sort of lawsuit, because I feel like that's some important information to discuss.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, sounds like a lot got hurt there. So
Okay, so slight correction. It wasn't the actress for the female goon. It was her stunt double who was injured in this accident, and which is no less unfortunate, but also unfortunately she was killed alongside her husband back in February of 2020 by her ex-husband over a dispute, which is also very unfortunate.
wow, yeah, that's pretty crazy.
But I couldn't find anything about any sort of lawsuit she would have filed. But I would hope she was fairly compensated for, well, everything.
I'm sure, because I'm sure if she wasn't, then yeah, I would have sued. But
All right. So there was some interesting things that didn't happen with this movie as well. Some ideas proposed for part two included visiting Doc's family and going to Prohibition days when Biff's ancestor was a bootlegger. This last little bit was reworked for the Telltale's Back to the Future game, so that's interesting.
I don't know what that is.
Don't worry about it. There was a plotline that was left out of the. Well, there was a deleted scene that was left out that would have been pretty interesting to see. When old Biff comes back to 2015, we see him shaking and we see him collapse. The deleted scene would have had him completely fading from existence, because in this alternate future, Lorraine would have shot him sometime back in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
I guess she just got sick of his crap and just decided to cap him.
I guess.
Which, yeah. Now this movie ends with Doc getting sent back to 1885, and Marty has to find the current Doc, the one in 1955, to help him get back there. And the movie actually ends with with basically a trailer for the next movie. So that's nice. See that they're letting us know. Yeah, we're gonna get this done. We're gonna do it, because as far as I'm aware, parts 2 and 3 were filmed back to back. So there was a lot of overlap and lots of just general callbacks and call forwards that make a lot of sense when you know that these movies were made back to back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a lot of stuff happens at the same time. So yeah, that makes sense.
And this was something that I didn't mention when we talked about the first movie, but I like how little things in the background or in the foreground that don't seem so important at the time come back to really pay off. Because in the first movie, you have the old ladies asking to save the clock tower, and that becomes an important plot point later when they have to use that as a lightning rod to get Marty back to the future. Or you have you have little things that that Jennifer or Marty will say that helped them later on, like with Marty giving encouragement to his father back in the 50s to help him become, well, a stronger person. It's really interesting. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool how everything works out.
Now, I don't think you have anything more to say on part two. I don't as well. It's a fun movie. I like it, and it's just, yeah. Hot take, it is probably the weakest in the trilogy for me, but that's okay because with a trilogy as good as this, even the weak link is still pretty good.
Yep, it is.
Now, we're gonna join Marty back in the Old West with Back to the Future Part 3.
Okay. I should have said yeehaw. Darn it.
We're keeping that in.
Dang.
Back to the Future Part 3. Yeah, this is a pretty good movie, I think. I feel like it's very underrated. A lot of the fans think that this is from what I've seen, claim this is the worst of the trilogy, or least good, I should say. Second best for me, honestly. I like how they do something different from the second movie. Maybe I am a bit biased because I'm a bit of a Wild West nut, but it's the same setting but different. It's more focused on Doc this time instead of Marty. That's a nice change of pace. We get to see him. We get to see how he would he would live in the Old West. We see him fall in love. We see him really think about what he wants to do outside of what Marty has going on. It's all great stuff, I think.
Yeah, it is a good change of pace. It is much different than the other two. But it still connects everything, and it's a fun time.
Yeah. So, again, I'm not sure why I'm pulling up the IMDb page, but actually there are one new face, really. Mary Steenburgen plays Clara Clayton, the woman that Doc falls in love with back in the Old West in Marty's time. She's this person who this ravine is named after because she fell in and died. That's kind of, yeah, that fits, actually.
Yeah.
And a lot of people I've seen don't really care for her too much. I'm pretty neutral, honestly. She's not offensive. She's not great. She's serviceable, I think.
Yeah, I think I'll have to agree with you. Pretty neutral about it.
He appeared in the second movie, but he reappears here again. Flea shows up as one of Marty's friends, Needles. He's one of the people who likes to push Marty's button by calling him Chicken, which that became a thing in the second movie and kind of carries on here, though that never really came up in the first one. That's kind of odd.
Well, it did a little bit, right? It wasn't in the bar.
It didn't show up in the first movie at all.
Are you sure?
Pretty sure, yeah.
I feel like that's not true.
It's true. It didn't come up.
I feel like I'm correct.
I feel like you're wrong.
Well, okay.
I looked it up. Molly's wrong. I'm right. She's going to have to get used to that.
I still think it was in there.
It weren't.
Whatever. I'll have to rewatch the movie.
Oh, darn.
Yep.
Anyways, so Back to Future Part 3. Marty is stuck in the Old West because he gets, he runs into a group of Indians, or Native Americans, if that's your preferred nomenclature. One of them shoots an arrow at the DeLorean, and it cuts the fuel line. Kind of a bad idea to put the fuel line on the outside, but yeah, whatever. Since it's kind of hard to find fuel in 1885, those gas prices were high. They decide that they're going to push the DeLorean with a train to get it up to 88 miles an hour. Yeah, sure, fine, whatever.
That's probably the only thing you can do.
I'd say I'd ask why Doc didn't just take the gas from the DeLorean. He stored it in the mine, but he probably wouldn't have left fuel in the DeLorean for 70 years. That's not good for a car's engine to be left in there for that long.
Probably not.
Now, any parts that they would need, they could easily scavenge from the other DeLorean because it's just going to get replaced back in 1955. So there's no problem there. But yeah, he probably would have drained the car of all fluids before putting it in there for 70 years.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Here, Marty comes across the ancestor of Biff Tannen, Mad Dog Tannen. He's a Wild West outlaw, and he's a bit more detestable than the original Tannen, but he's still hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is.
This guy just still can't do idioms. He still, and he even has a guy in his gang to, be his brain for him. Just tell him what comes after 6. What a forfeit means. All that. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, his own personal dictionary and person who helps him, count to 10.
Which, if you're the kind of guy who can't count to 10, but is also, perfectly willing to shoot anyone who calls you out on that, then yeah, I probably would have a guy to do that for me too.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. This time, Michael J. Fox gets to play another version of himself. 2 other McFly family members, actually. He gets to play Seamus McFly, an Irish immigrant to America in 1885, and William McFly in a photo, so still counts. And I feel like putting these two, the same actor together as 2 different characters in the same shot is a little bit better than it was in the first movie. Like, it seems a bit more seamless. Again, not as polished as something like Sinners, which did it fantastically, I may add, but still just a tad bit better.
Yeah. It did seem pretty good here.
Lorraine also plays, Leah Thompson also plays Maggie McFly, Seamus's wife, which is kind of interesting. I guess McFly men just like women who look like Leah Thompson. I get it.
Yeah, I guess so.
So the main cast all cited this as their favorite movie in the trilogy. I assume maybe because it might have been the most fun to actually shoot.
Yeah, it may have been.
At one point in the movie, Marty uses the same trick that Clint Eastwood's character, the man with no name, uses in A Fistful of Dollars to avoid getting shot by Ramon when he uses his Winchester on him. He takes, in this case, an oven door and sticks it under his poncho to keep from dying, which, along with Back to the Future 2, is kind of an interesting reference to A Fistful of Dollars, because in A Fistful of Dollars, the man with no name finds himself in this town between these 2 warring families. Okay, we all know this. And at one point, he discovers that there's a woman being held captive by a rich and powerful man who she doesn't want to be married to. She was taken from her original husband. You seeing where this is going?
Yes, I do see where this is going.
And by the end, Clint Eastwood returns her to her love. Same thing happens here. And restoring the timeline, Marty, going under the alias of Clint Eastwood in the Old West, returns his mom to his dad.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All while using that same armor trick that Clint Eastwood used. It's kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah. I didn't even think of that, but of course you would.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting.
I'm using that word a lot in this video, but that's just because that's probably the best way I can describe these movies. It's a lot of interesting things that happen.
You're right. Yeah.
Now let's get back to Doc and Clara. Like I said, she's not the the most strong character. She's not the most interesting. She's not bad. She does the job fine enough. She's the woman that Dog was meant to marry because, well, they're both weirdos out of their time, and they complete each other, really. We see them at the end. They have a couple of kids that they name after Jules Verne, one each. Okay, and they have this new time machine. It's a steam powered locomotive because, well, guys love trains. It's just an indisputable fact.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Trains are cool, man.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is kind of weird, given that Doc said that he didn't want it was a mistake to build the time machine. So why would he do it again? I don't know.
Yeah, I always thought that was weird too. I'm like, didn't you just say that you regretted making one and now you make another one, but cooler?
Maybe he changed his mind.
Yeah. Oh well.
Uh, let's see. Okay, so just before we started this, I showed you a deleted scene from this movie, where Marshall Strickland, played by James Tolkien, was was murdered by Mad Dog Tannen, which is why when Tannen is arrested at the end, he's arrested by the deputies instead of Strickland himself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which they cut this because Robert Zemeckis was afraid that it would make the audience root for Marty to kill Tannen, which would be a bit of a plot hole given that supposedly Tannen hadn't had kids yet, so that would mean that Biff wasn't born, which would have meant that it would remove some sort of thing to keep to it would have removed George punching him out to so that he would eventually have Lorraine fall in love with him, and therefore Marty wouldn't be born, and therefore it wouldn't have gone back to you get this whole thing, right?
Yeah, you don't have to explain that.
Which, yeah. So probably good to cut that, given all of that.
Yes, definitely.
ZZ Top makes appearances in the town during the celebration. They're the ones with the guitars and the drums spinning, because that's just what they did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's see. At one point, Ronald Reagan was actually approached to play the mayor of Hill Valley in 1885, but the Secret Service said no.
That's pretty funny.
Definitely would have been interesting. Now let's get to the whole Crispin Glover not appearing in this one. Now the story goes he wanted more money to appear in part 2, but Robert Zemeckis said, "No, you're barely going to be in this. Why would we do that?" So he left, or he got fired. I don't know which one it was, and he was replaced by Jeffrey Weissman, who well, George is hardly in the second one anyway, so any differences are kind of negligible, given the fact that his first appearance is him upside down in an old man makeup. It's a whole thing. Just go with it. It makes more sense in context, but at that point, does it really matter who George is at that point? Not really.
No, yeah, with all the makeup and everything, yeah, you can't even tell.
Now, when they go back to 1955, it's a bit more difficult, since there would have been more shots of George with his actual face being Crispin Glover, what they did was they reused footage from the first movie, which became a whole thing. That it was after that where movie makers weren't allowed to do that anymore. Just use footage of actors without their consent, which I would have thought that would have been a thing already.
Yeah, you would think. Oh, but oh well.
And so for part three, they just used Jeff Wiseman and put used prosthetics and sunglasses to hide the fact that he wasn't Crispin Glover. Which again, he hardly shows up. He's there and gone. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter.
So that's that. That's this trilogy. It's one of my favorites of all time. It's up there in my opinion with. Well, geez, there's a lot of movie trilogies I can name, but I'm not going to because it's if I start now, I'm not going to stop.
Yeah, we don't want that.
No, we don't. So, happy 40th anniversary to Back to the Future, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you next time.